get you my first point. I'm going to get a little weird here for a second. I actually am about to give a ton of praise to the New York Jets. Look, you never want your starting quarterback to go down. That is a fact. But one thing you have to expect in the modern NFL is that your starting quarterback is going to go down. Justin Fields remains in concussion protocol. As a result, he will miss this weekend's game. And what does that mean? Well, Tyrod Taylor is going to start. This is one of those moments. Like, listen, at the end of the day, you've got to make sure there is somebody on your team that can win you a game. And while some of you may scoff at the concept of having to go through much time with Tyrod Taylor, I will remind you that everywhere he's ever been, he's been able to at least keep things afloat. That's all you need from your backup quarterback. Having a vet in the room with some similar skill sets that can come in and step in for Justin Fields, that has seen a lot of football, that is not going to feel overwhelmed by the moment, that's not going to be confused by what defenses are showing him, that's going to be able to come in and play capably. This is a moment where I turn around and I say kudos to the Jets, because certainly we've watched other teams over the course of the first few weeks of the season scramble to figure out what they're going to do. As I have told you before, last year, 50 different starting quarterbacks in the NFL. 50, 5-0, right? What does that tell you? It tells you more often than not you will need a backup, which is why from the minute the offseason starts, you have to ask yourself, who's going to keep things going? I think Tyrod Taylor in this situation, well, not a world beater at the quarterback position, certainly not looking around saying, oh, he should be a starter somewhere. If I'm looking around at the backups, I'm saying, hey, good job, Jets. Good job at least protecting yourself, knowing that you will at some point during the course of the season need your backup. I realize it feels like a backhanded compliment. It is not. This is sincere. To the Jets, I would say they've done a smart thing with the way they run their organization, that we know they're going to have their backup quarterback, and we don't feel like that's necessarily an abject disaster. Not every team can say that. That brings us to our top point, speaking of the NFL. Again, we will get to the Clippers in just a few minutes with Tom Haberstroh, but it is a Thursday, and that means Thursday night football is on everybody's mind, and we have a matchup that, let's face it, Vegas tells us isn't going to be much of a matchup. The Bills favored by 12.5 over the Dolphins, and it raises just sort of the weirdest question to be asking after only a couple of weeks, Caroline. Like, what are we going to have to see at this point to actually believe in the Dolphins? In fact, is there some element here where we walk away from this and we say, man, Mike McDaniel could get canned after this one?
12.5 is a massive spread. 12.5 points, and I'd lay it. Honestly, like, if I'm going to put money on this game, I would lay the points with the Buffalo Bills. You know, I think a lot of times that's the narrative that we want to portray, right? Like, things go so badly that you have no choice but to fire the coach. I feel so confident that Mike McDaniel's time or his future in Miami will be incredibly short, because I don't think that there is any sort of sense of optimism in that locker room or in that front office for his ability to be able to turn this ship around. The roster doesn't seem to be deep enough or talented enough, nor do they play fits, in my opinion, with a level of fire and tenacity that I think is necessary, a level of buy-in that I think is necessary to at least give people, you know, little building blocks to hold on to think, okay, this team is continuing to figure things out. So what would an outcome of tonight or a final score would it be to ultimately cut ties with Mike McDaniel? I don't know. 100-0, 150-0. Would it 24-21 give people enough hope that Mike McDaniel is the truth and he's the answer in Miami? I don't think so, nor do I think it should. So I don't think that the end should justify the means. I don't think that the outcome tonight, one way or another, should necessarily change the way that we view Mike McDaniel, because this is one data point, and we have lots of other data points that point to Mike McDaniel not being the answer for the Miami Dolphins.
So there is no hard and fast rule. And I hate that we have to say this every time, but let's just say this clearly to get it out there. Nobody on this show is ever rooting for a coach to get fired. Okay. I don't care
Correct.
how bad your situation is. I'm never rooting for somebody to lose their job. Now that we've said what should be the obvious, but isn't always, I don't think that there's a hard and fast rule on when the right time is to move on from a coach. And I struggle with this because I've made fun of my own organization, my favorite team, for firing coaches all the time. But there's a real question. Once you know you don't have the right guy, what's the right thing to do? And I think that's why situations matter. In fact, this week on radio in Nashville, I was hanging out with our buddy Buck Rising. I was asked about what to do in the Titans situation. And I said, sure, if you believe Callahan is setting Cam Ward back, you fire him. I don't care if it's 2 weeks in. That's a different situation because you're developing a young quarterback. The Bears developing a young quarterback is a different situation. There is not a development issue here. So now if you're the Dolphins, what you're looking at is saying, do we have the right guy in the room? And what good will it do to make change right now? I don't really know the answer to that. I mean, is there somebody else on their staff that's suddenly going to be able to light a fire under these guys' butts and get a wildly different result? Are they really in that situation? I don't know. So that's why, as much as we talk about the firing of Mike McDaniel, honestly, Caroline, I think they could lose by a boatload. I think they could be boat race tonight, and McDaniel's still going to be the head coach, because I'm not sure what I see as the benefit. Other than making fans feel better about the fact that their team sucks, I don't see any great benefit to suddenly making a coaching change. Rarely, sometimes, but rarely does an interim coach come in and suddenly get the juices flowing in a way that makes a drastic difference. And I don't think that there's any coach on that staff that's going to come in and make the Dolphins as good as the Bills. So what have you seen in the first 2 weeks of the season that you couldn't anticipate? So I feel like as much as we talk about the hot seat of Mike McDaniel, barring a 70-0 sort of shellacking like they did to Denver a few years ago, I just don't see a result here. If they lose by 3 touchdowns, I don't think that that's a fireable offense, because at some point, I'm not sure what makes it better.
Because there are so many other fireable offenses. It wouldn't just be losing by 3 touchdowns. And I think that the final straw has already come and gone, to where 3 touchdowns would a 3-touchdown loss would just kind of be confirming what we already know, that time has run out and the shine is off the apple with Mike McDaniel. I think the only reason why you would make a change right now is if you feel like there is enough season left. You got 15 games left, including the game tonight against the Bills. After this game, 14 games left to be able to right the ship, to turn things around. So if everybody in that locker room, the leaders in that locker room and the leaders in the clubhouse, if they believe that Mike McDaniel is the piece that is standing in their way to turn things around and, eventually piece together a 9-8 season, a winning season, whatever, the view of success might be for this team after firing a coach, if they feel like the talent in this locker room and the ability of this team is better than what they're getting, and they feel like they can still get that out of this team just with new leadership, that's why you would make that change. But if you don't believe that, if you just think this is kind of a foregone season, I guess you just hold on to him, and then you be the first team that goes out and starts interviewing some of these young up-and-coming coaches, or you start to get a jump start on interviewing coaches before any other team in the NFL fires their head coach. Because I think Brian Callahan in Tennessee is another one that will probably be let go before the end of the season. To get a jump on the interview process, I guess, would be why you would do it.
I guess, but the other part of this you have to take into account is a little bit of Tua's personality, because certainly you want to get the most out of your quarterback that you paid some money to. And where I think is interesting, and I don't mean this in a negative way at all, but Tua is an I love you man quarterback. And you've heard me say this before, but certain quarterbacks need affirmation. And I think it became pretty clear when Tua talked about having better success under McDaniel, simply because he felt better support. He felt like the organization believed in him. And I love that level of honesty. There is nothing wrong with somebody that needs positivity. In fact, I would say that about myself. I respond to either very, very tough, like, hey, you suck at this, great, I'll respond to that. But I like to work with people that I think believe in what I do. There's nothing wrong with admitting that. Tua has admitted, that the previous coaching staff coached him in a different tone that he didn't like. He sort of crumbled under. So if you're going to make change, and part of the point of making change is that you want to get more out of your team, there's a fine line to how do you get more out of your team, but also make sure you're enforcing some of what your quarterback needs. I don't say that as a negative, but it's just one of the factors you have to take into here. If you're saying, hey, we're going to make a change at the head coach to bring a spark to the organization, I think you do have to be at least a little nervous that spark could lead to some sort of negative impact to your quarterback also. Like, figuring out the right way to handle this locker room is an issue. And I'm not trying to say the season's lost, but I think the Dolphins are going to be 0-3. And when they're 0-3, they're going to have to sit down and figure out, what does this 0-3 look like? Where do we think we would be? And what will actually turn it around? And if you don't have good, tangible work on what will turn it around in 1 week, I don't think you make a change just to make a change, just so the fans don't feel like you suck.
I also do wonder how committed the Dolphins want to be to Tua moving forward. Like, financially right now, they are committed to Tua. But we've seen it in Denver, and CMAC did some fabulous reporting on what the options and avenues would be for the Dolphins if they want to move forward without Tua and take that cap hit that is really, really, really going to hurt, but you can justify it by saying, hey, we know he's not our guy. We know Tua's not the guy, so we have to do whatever is in our power to go out and find that guy. So I do wonder, and you make a very fair point about the coaching staff, that you want to make sure that whoever you bring in is going to be able to get the most out of your players to make that locker room gel much better than it has in the past, or it has over the course of 2 games so far this season. But if they're not committed to Tua, or they want to explore avenues where they can move on from Tua, what's holding you back? What's stopping you from making that change at the top to then eventually make that change at the quarterback position?
You are 1,000% right. But one thing that CMAC stressed to me when I was doing inside coverage, which, by the way, you can watch on Yahoo Sports Networks at 6:30 p.m. Monday through Thursday. When I was doing inside coverage all the time, one thing that CMAC stressed was that it became much easier to take that salary cap hit of getting rid of Russ once Sean Payton knew he loved Bo Nix. Now, how that will play out, I don't know. But if you are going to take, according to Over the Cap right now, if they were to cut to it at some point, it looks like it could be anywhere from $70 to $90 million in dead cap, depending on when they do it and how they allocate that money.
Man.
If you're going to take that, you better know that you got a quarterback you love in the draft, because the only way you're replacing that is with rookie equity, and I just don't know that player exists. We'll keep breaking down Thursday Night Football because there's a ton of football action to get to, but the big breaking news this morning, it's a day that ends in Y, which means we get more reporting from Pablo, and Tom Haberstroh is going to join us to figure out what the latest reports mean about the Clippers and salary cap circumvention. We'll talk about it next. Exclusive. 2 weeks before Kawhi's first no-show payday, the Clippers bailed out aspiration with a $21 million deal signed by the team's CFO. Yes, Mark Cuban sent Pablo Torre down this rabbit hole. He literally described exactly what they did, a source says, to circumvent the cap. I'm going to be honest with y'all. We had a show ready for you. We had all sorts of big football content ready for you. We were ready for a Thursday night. And then all of a sudden this morning, yet another Pablo bomb comes out. So Tom Haberstroh joins us now. He answered the bat phone yet again early in the morning. Appreciate you, Tom. So I'm just going to admit my ignorance. And this is what I'm going to ask you to do, because we all went down the rabbit hole trying to figure this out. Explain to everybody like they're a 5-year-old. That's my favorite way to do this. What does the newest reporting actually mean?
Well, it's over an hour-long episode, so I'll try to truncate that into this interview here. But I will tell you, you have to watch the whole thing because it really is an unbelievable report from Pablo Torre Finds Out, where he is talking to Dan Le Batard from Meadowlark Media, and they're acting out a deposition transcript that Pablo Torre had found out, that he had discovered, and he was able to find document after document after document that shows more money, over $100 million, were coming from Steve Ballmer and the Clippers to fund this Aspiration company that, remember, Aspiration signed an endorsement deal with Kawhi Leonard where they did not announce the endorsement deal, and Kawhi Leonard did not do anything to endorse this company. And the question hanging over all of this is, was this cap circumvention or not? And it's becoming increasingly hard to see any other explanation based on Pablo's reporting today that Steve Ballmer didn't just put in $50 million into this company, but over $110 million as this company was circling down the drain. Aspiration was circling down the drain. Pablo reported that in this deposition sit down, the transcript that he'd uncovered on a related lawsuit of a Clover financial institution that was suing the co-founder of Aspiration, he had discovered that at least 19 financial institutions were staying away from Aspiration, said, we don't want to have anything to do with this company. We are not sending in more money into this Aspiration company. And yet, as Pablo Torre Finds Out reported, Steve Ballmer and Dennis Wong, the co-owner of the LA Clippers, came in, parachuted in, and said, here's more money. Here's more money. So why were all of these institutions, financial institutions, looking at this Aspiration company and saying, why would we touch them? Why would we invest more money in this company? Why KPMG stopped auditing this company? They resigned as the auditor of this company. And yet here's Steve Ballmer and a co-owner of the Clippers saying, hey, we'll get you the money you need. We'll get you more money. And so the question hanging all over this is, if this wasn't cap circumvention, why is everything so secretive? Because this other thing happened in this episode, which you have to watch it to fully appreciate what went down in this deposition transcript. As the Aspiration co-founder is under deposition, under oath in this lawsuit, he was looking at his attorney and looking to see, as soon as they started asking about the nature of Steve Ballmer's investment into Aspiration, he looked at his attorney, and his attorney said, don't look at me. As if to say, you answer the question. What is the nature of Steve Ballmer's relationship and investment into the company around 2022, 2023? And Joe Sandberg, in this deposition that was brought to light by Pablo Torre's reporting, incredible reporting, he pled the fifth. The co-founder of Aspiration, when asked under oath about the nature of these investments from Steve Ballmer and the Clippers, he suddenly said, I plead the fifth. So Adam Silver has to get to the bottom of this and understand, why is this so secretive? Why is this co-founder pleading the fifth about why Steve Ballmer is investing at this time when everybody else refuses to invest in this company? And if it isn't cap circumvention, what could this possibly be? And so this is an incredible revelation and reporting from Pablo Torre. And we haven't even talked about the Mark Cuban stuff.
Let's get into the Mark Cuban stuff, because that was kind of what was the catalyst for this most recent finding from Pablo Torre Finds Out, that Mark Cuban said, well, hey, if they really wanted to circumvent the cap, then they could have just done this. And so Pablo said, all right, sure, let's look into that then. Sure enough, that's exactly what they found. That is exactly what they did. So let's get into the Mark Cuban of it all, and that chapter of this story, and how this exchange between Mark Cuban and Pablo Torre led us to this most recent finding.
Yeah, I could not imagine that the league office was happy to see that Mark Cuban, who has been fined more by the league office than any other NBA owner in NBA history, and has had his own share of issues running the Mavericks organization, is out here declaring, I am Team Ballmer from the get-go, and goes on Pablo Torre's podcast and has over 3 hours of conversation that was whittled down to about an hour. And I was like, man, the league office can't be really happy that he's out here defending in the public without kind of really thinking this through. Because over the weekend, as Pablo pointed out, there was almost 100 tweets, thousands and thousands of words that Mark Cuban had written in defense of Steve Ballmer. And within those tweets, he laid it out pretty explicitly. Hey, if this was really cap invention, and I'm paraphrasing here, if this was really cap circumvention, then wouldn't you think Steve Ballmer would have invested more money and used these carbon credits to funnel money to Kawhi Leonard if this was truly cap circumvention? And Pablo was like, as you said, Caroline, was like, let's go see. And he uncovered more money, just that, more money that lines up with the time schedule of Kawhi Leonard. And so it does appear that without Mark Cuban prodding and laying out the blueprint for cap circumvention and saying, hey, if this really was something fishy and this was breaking the rules, wouldn't you think they would have done it this way? And that's exactly what Pablo found out. So again, we are looking at a story that's unraveling before our eyes. This is the 4th installment of this series. And I gotta say, I'm curious to see if Mark Cuban is going to continue his tweet storm about this story, because what Pablo is doing is using those tweets against him, against Steve Ballmer, and this is not a good defense of Steve Ballmer if you are truly #Team Ballmer.
Why is Mark Cuban dying on this hill?
I don't know. A lot of people around the league are asking that same question: is why is Mark Cuban having so much interest in this story? Thousands and thousands of words in tweets over the weekend when everyone's like, hey, I'm out with my kids and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. He's not being interrogated here. He's not being investigated in here. And so no one seems to know the answer to this question. And by the way, he also purported like, hey, Uncle Dennis, this could be all just Uncle Dennis, the manager of Kawhi Leonard, Dennis Robertson, who is basically going into all the Toronto Raptors previously and the Los Angeles Lakers and the LA Clippers with a list of demands. If you want Kawhi Leonard, hey, here's what you need, reportedly. And we have in this reporting from Pablo Torre, what he is reporting, a text message from Uncle Dennis to the owner of this company, Aspiration, in which he's essentially asking for payment because it's late for Kawhi Leonard. So as we continue, it is bombshell after bombshell after bombshell. And Adam Silver, after being asked about this, and he's backtracking, guys, training camp's in like 10 days. Training camp is in 10 days. And this is a huge story in the NBA that is not going away anytime soon.
You bring up #Team Ballmer. If we want to play devil's advocate here and look at this story through the lens of people that are pro Steve Ballmer and, anti any of Pablo Torre's findings, from what we now know, the most recent evidence that has been uncovered and then the previous evidence that has been uncovered, what more, in your opinion, needs to come out for all of the #Team Ballmer out there to believe that this is in fact fair play, to believe in fact that the Clippers did circumvent the cap?
Yeah, I don't know what's left. I don't know. And certainly I believe that someone would have reported this already as the defense, right? Is the alibi. I would have expected, with all of the other reporting in the other direction from Pablo Torre, from Toronto, from other sources, the Athletic and Mike Vorkunov, all of this reporting pointing in one direction. And I have yet to see anything that looks like an alibi or some sort of defense that clears and exonerates Steve Ballmer and the Clippers in this whole mess. There is, at some point, Adam Silver has to hold his hands up and say, I've seen enough. And the question for everyone in the league that is hovering over this entire investigation and story is, when is Adam Silver going to draw his ruling here? Because as this is swirling around and this dark cloud hovering over the Clippers, I remind everybody, The Clippers are hosting the All-Star game in LA in 5 months. Steve Ballmer is very much positioning himself as the face of this All-Star game at Intuit Dome, his new arena. And so this story, the block is hot right now. And I don't know how they're going to be able to stamp out this or remove this cloud as the season approaches, when media availabilities are coming around. And certainly, I mean, Mark Cuban, I don't know what he does here. Maybe Adam Silver gives him a call and says, like, hey, can you just like log off? Can you log off for a second, please? And don't continue to give the blueprint to Pablo Torre. So I just think that I'm trying to find plausible deniability here for Steve Ballmer and the Clippers. But as Pablo Torre is lining this up, it is very increasingly very hard to figure out how this isn't cap circumvention.
Tom, I talked to somebody I think is pretty well connected with the league the other day, and he said it's a very long investigation coming. May not even be done till the end of the season, he said. Why? If Pablo can give me new reporting every 3 days, it seems to be another layer of this. Why does the NBA need months and months and months to investigate us and tell us what's happened?
Well, I think the level of the burden of proof that Adam Silver has said, he's like, I presume all my owners essentially are innocent until proven guilty. They are not guilty until proven innocent. So in this case, the bar is going to be pretty high for Adam Silver to come down hard on a guy that is worth almost more money than the entire NBA combined. All the owners in the NBA, if you look at the math here, he's richer at 170 billion, reported $170 billion worth. He is basically richer than 25 NBA owners. And so if Adam Silver, who is working for Steve Ballmer and the other owners, is going to come down hard on Steve Ballmer, he is going to want to have as many receipts as he can have. And so that's where Wachtell Lipton, the commissioned law firm for the NBA, is going to dig in and get as many documents as they can, internal documents from the Clippers, and that's going to take a while. However, the sooner that this gets done, I think the sooner that we can move on from this story. It is a PR disaster at this point, considering the All-Star game coming up and considering there's Luka Doncic in LA and there's all these wonderful storylines in the NBA, but all everyone wants to talk about is this Kawhi Leonard story. So the sooner that they can find resolution to this, I think the better. But from a legal standpoint, this is going to be tough to get this over in a hurry.
I know we got to let you go real quick. Do you believe that what we have seen from Pablo so far enough, as it is right now, would be enough to meet that bar?
For me, my opinion, yes. And for a lot of GMs and executives around the league, I think the answer increasingly is yes. And the question is, does Adam Silver find the same way? And the conflict of interest here is glaring. Steve Ballmer, as been reported, is the chair of the NBA's audit committee. Okay? So the optics of this and the conflict of interest, do we trust the NBA to do the right thing here from a legal standpoint or from what's obvious here in the reporting, what this looks like? Or is this just one big mess of politics within the NBA? And we'll find out, we will find out what Adam Silver does after this investigation concludes, but it's being increasingly hard to see this other than cap circumvention.
Tom, we appreciate your time early in the morning. Thanks for answering the bat phone as always, my friend. You made us smarter, and we appreciate you. Thanks for coming on.
You got it.
Follow
Thanks,
him on
Tom.
Twitter. You guys know the deal. Tom doing great work. All right, we'll keep you updated on any additional updates we get. Coming up, who should win the AL MVP? Conspiracy theorists are everywhere on this one. We'll break it down. Yahoo Sports Daily.
I don't have a vote, and if I did, I would vote for Cal Raleigh. Not because of voter fatigue, and not because Aaron Judge isn't better as a hitter. I would rather have Aaron Judge next season and the year after that. I think Aaron Judge is a better player than Cal Raleigh. I just believe that what Cal Raleigh has done is historic and deserves recognition and celebration. This season should be remembered as the season of Cal Raleigh when he hit all those home runs. That is not to take anything away from Aaron Judge. I just think that being a catcher in this day and age, having the time management skills, shouldering the physical load that it takes is just unbelievable. And with every home run, you're just more and more impressed.
That's the Baseball Barbercast breaking down the MVP voting conversation. And you know this show at this point, we're a big dumper show, okay? So a lot of questions here on Yahoo Sports.
Always
Stadium.
have
Caroline
been.
Fenton, Jason Fitz.
Always will be.
I mean, we have. Actually, we have from day one, we've been a big dumper show. And, you see the numbers there. You see the AL MVP race. And on this show, we feel like maybe big dumper, Dumpy McDumperson, Dumpy McGee. He's not getting enough love. I've got all of these. I've got all of these like a child.
Bust down, Dumpiana.
Okay. At this point, do you believe at this point that maybe Cal should be getting more love? Like, why do you think he's not getting the love he deserves, Caroline?
I think he is getting love because it has been Aaron Judge and Cal Raleigh. Like, it is those two. That's the race. It wouldn't be fair of us to say that he's not getting any love because this has been the conversation. Aaron Judge versus Cal Raleigh. It's just wildly different in the sports books, but we talked about this a couple of days ago, and the sports books looked much different. Aaron Judge was minus 900 just a couple of days ago to win AL MVP. So you're obviously seeing a whole lot of movement in the sports books. So I am in agreement that I think it should be Cal Raleigh, but I do understand Fitz. I always like to, look at both sides here. I'll entertain the Aaron Judge of it all because anybody that thinks Aaron Judge should be AL MVP isn't wrong. Like, this isn't a right or a wrong, or it's only Cal Raleigh and anybody thinks that Aaron Judge should win MVP is stupid. That's not what it is. Both have very, very strong cases. I agree that Cal Raleigh should be AL MVP. But if you want to look at the overall stats, if I want to play devil's advocate here, and the people that are saying home runs aren't everything in baseball, you're correct. And the overall offensive numbers, if you want to take away, home runs or RBIs or whatever it might be, it would be advantage Aaron Judge. I mean, Aaron Judge has a significantly higher batting average. Aaron Judge is one of the highest batting averages in all of Major League Baseball. Aaron Judge has a higher on base percentage. Aaron Judge has a higher OPS. That those statistics are in favor of Aaron Judge. But home runs do matter in baseball. It's not the only thing that matters, but it does matter. And Cal Raleigh has been hitting home runs at such a high clip. He just broke Mickey Mantle's record for most home runs in a single season from a switch hitter. Mickey Mantle. There is a reason why that record has stood as long as it has, because it's incredibly difficult to break. And you don't see switch hitters hitting at the clip that Cal Raleigh has been hitting. We don't see the kind of dominance from switch hitters, in this day and age like we did in Mickey Mantle's era. So I think that alone, the historical significance of it all should matter, and we should honor that.
We just had a stat up on one of those tweets that said if Aaron Judge's OPS was 200 points lower, it would be Cal Raleigh, right? That's how much better he is right now. Like, if Cal Raleigh's OPS was 200 points lower, he'd be a league average hitter. So if the big dumper's OPS was 200 points lower, he'd just be dumper, right? This is the thing. I think we've gone so far in the, oh my God, if you're voting for Aaron Judge, you must have a bias that I don't want to go. I find myself now over the course of the last 48 hours actually rooting for Aaron Judge because I'm tired of people thinking that the only reason he's getting the props he's getting is because he's a Yankee. Now, I do think that there is some, confirmation bias in what you see. And so as somebody that lives on the East Coast, I will just be flat out honest. It's a hell of a lot easier to watch the Yankees than it is to watch the Mariners. Your argument can be if you are an MVP voter, it's your job to watch all of it. You are 1,000% correct. I am the biggest Raiders fan that anybody has ever met. My God, I have a Raiders tattoo. I was struggling to stay up at midnight to watch the end of a big Raiders game because it was midnight. Like, there is some element of the Mariners being big West Coast, playing a lot of late games. I do think that probably presents a challenge for MVP voters. But the concept that means that they have a bias, to me, is just flawed. And I can only go back to, there's 2 awards that I can proudly say I have a vote for. One is the Bolitnikoff Award for the best wide receiver in college football, and the other is for the Grammys. And I can tell you definitively on both of those situations, are there artists that I like? Are there wide receivers that I like? Yes. Does it influence the way I vote? No. And I'd like to believe everybody's that way. So to me, the concept that, well, they're only voting for Aaron Judge because he's a Yankee, it's just asinine. At some point, I'll go back to years ago, before Taylor Swift was the phenomenon she is now. I voted for Taylor Swift after one of her first big records to win Grammy of the Year. And other Grammy voters absolutely trashed me for it at the time because they said, look, she's not good enough to win a Grammy. My answer to that was she created the most powerful, impactful record of the summer because everybody will remember it forever. I say that because it's a reminder that you can put 30 musicians in a room and ask them to argue over the Grammys, and you'll get 30 different standpoints on why something is important. You can put 30 different AL MVP voters in the room, and you will get 30 different views on what an MVP actually means. I think Cal Raleigh is incredibly deserving for the home run numbers and for the sensation he's created. And we like shiny new things. So the fact that we're talking about a Mariner in the AL MVP vote feels really substantial, and it has weight to me. And so it's easy to turn around and say, oh, I'm just tired of Aaron Judge. I'm tired of the Yankees. I'm tired of this just Yankee, but all these things that we say. Well, okay, at the end of the day, I don't want to let my fatigue also let me belittle a possible candidate. Like, LeBron should have been the NBA MVP almost every year. It's just, we just get too infatuated. Well, LeBron's already won it. Now we got to get, no, LeBron was the MVP over and over and over again. If Aaron Judge continues the season that he's had over the course of the last couple of weeks, he's wildly deserving of the AL MVP. So is Cal Raleigh. I'm glad I don't have to make these decisions. I just think that the fact that we've turned this, not you and I, but the overall sports consumption population has turned this into Aaron Judge is just getting it because he's a Yankee and Cal really deserves it. I just think that's an oversimplification, and it's a fallacy to the voters. I genuinely believe voters take the responsibility, the majority, far more serious than that.
It's a fallacy, and it's also unfair. Like, if you think that Aaron Judge is getting AL MVP hype just because of the pinstripes on his jersey, you are selling Aaron Judge wildly short. And that is coming from somebody who said, if I did have a vote, I'd love a vote. Call me, Rob Manfred. If I had a vote, I would vote for Cal Raleigh. And I think you bring up an incredibly important aspect to this award. I think the way that people interpret MVP or any of these awards can be wildly different. And, whatever your personal philosophy is, great. That's wonderful. You are totally inclined to have that opinion. I think that impact should be important. And impact is incredibly subjective. Impact doesn't pop up on a box score, and impact isn't something that is a scientific data point, but it is a feeling. Cal Raleigh is the story of the Major League Baseball season this year. He is. He was the story of the summer, and he has become this lovable character that I think we all as baseball fans have absolutely fallen in love with. It's the reason why we call ourselves a big dumper show, because he is so fun to talk about and he is so easy to fall in love with. And he has been something that even the casual baseball fans have been able to talk about, have been able to kind of follow this home run race throughout the entirety of the season. I think that matters, especially in a sport like baseball that isn't the NFL, that isn't college football, a sport like baseball that is continuing to try and get back to the top of the sports world that it once was, maybe in the late 90s, early 2000s. So I think that kind of impact matters. That's an impact that Cal Raleigh has had on this sport and on this league. That should be a data point on his resume.
No, I agree totally. I mean, I do believe that when you create a memory, when you create a sensation, when you are the storyline of a season, there's weight to that. And for anyone that thinks this is easy, I'll say the same thing I've said about the college football playoff. If you think voting for the AL MVP is easy, fine. This is what I would beg you to do. Sit down with 20 of your friends in one room, give everybody a ballot, and ask them to vote on the best pizza in town, whatever that town is that you live in. Ask them to vote on the best pizza, and then realize that you have to come up with a consensus where nobody's actually wrong and nobody's actually right. That's what voting on every one of these awards is. It's wildly subjective. So the concept of MVP, you're right, is some level of the greatness that they have in whatever sport they play. It's some level of the impact that they make. It's some level of how much do they lift their team and how much does their team lift them. These are all factors. And every single voter that's a human has the opportunity to then weigh whichever one of those factors they prefer the most. And much like pizza, some people like thick crust, some people like thin crust, some people are right and they like New York style pizza. Like, we all have our definitive opinions on it, and we all think the rest of the room is a bunch of morons. But remember that if everybody comes into it with honesty in the process, and everybody comes in with reverence for what the award means, and everybody comes in with respect to how important their vote is, then the overall process I trust. And here's the thing. I've been lucky enough in my life to work with Hall of Fame voters, to work with MVP voters in different sports, to work with people that actually have a say in these awards. We both have. And the one thing I can tell you is that while the popular conversation is that, oh my God, they're just mailing it in, 99% of the people that get that vote are honored to get that vote, and they treat that vote with the reverence it deserves. I believe the AL MVP will be the same. All right, from the AL MVP to fantasy football, from real awards to fake ones that matter way too much to us, but it's what we do every week because we love it. Joel Smyth going to join the show. We'll get some ideas on the best possible fantasy lineups for this week next. Oh, this is the lineup you wish you had. This was this week's best possible fantasy lineup, packed with star players from last week. Look at that lineup in week 2. If you had that 250.26 points in the best possible fantasy app, that's right, Yahoo Fantasy Sports, you kicked everybody's ass. And kudos to you. Tip of the cap to you, good sirs and ladies, because you actually dominated everybody. So let's hope you dominate this week. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitch, Yahoo Sports Daily. Joel Smyth joining us now. We're going to figure this out, okay? So we're going to figure a bunch of these out, help everybody. But let's dive in, start with tonight's game, okay? The spread is anywhere from 12.5 to 13.5 in favor of the Bills. I mean, absolutely. So does that make you consider benching any of the stars on the Miami side of the ball?
For sure. I still think you always start Achane every single week. Tyreek Hill, there's some questions. Hasn't been perfect, that's for sure. But I think he's worthy of a flex for Thursday night. If you need it, we would put him in a flex. But kind of that third best receiver in your lineup. Waddle is the one that I would confidently pass on. He is up in the air right now in terms of his injury designation. So we don't know if he's going to fully play. If he is in there, just another reason to bench him. Last time he played the Buffalo Bills, all of us had more receiving yards than him. He had -4 yards. The time before that, it was 41. The time before that, it was 46. He hasn't really had a good game against them since 2022. And what we've seen so far from him, not giving me too much confidence in turning it around this week against Buffalo. Buffalo had a rough week 1. Week 2, they kind of bounced back. They didn't allow Garrett Wilson to do much at all. And Waddle's volume right now is not really giving me too much of that confidence to believe in him for tonight.
Let's stick on that topic of the Dolphins then. Tyreek Hill to the Chiefs rumors have been heating up. If they heat up more and more and more, is Tyreek someone that fantasy managers should look to pick up or even trade for?
If they start heating up, I would be a believer more than I am a critic. I don't know how much faith I have in the Chiefs. It would be incredible for fantasy reasons if they did trade for Tyreek Hill. We go back and we're kind of looking at these other receivers in similar situations. They're veterans that are still very skilled and talented at this stage in their career. Like I'm thinking Devontae Adams going with Aaron Rodgers to New York, Keenan Allen, a recent one to Los Angeles. And we've seen that work out really well. I do think it would be the same here with Tyreek Hill back to Kansas City. Ever since he left, Matt Nagy came in shortly after, and this offense changed for what most would say would be the worst. They got a lot more passive. It was a lot less aggressive, and his average yards per attempt downfield, Patrick Mahomes, was at 6.3. That was the lowest in the NFL since that point over these last couple of years. It used to be like they were that downfield passing attack that was both really good but also aggressive. This year, they've at least shown signs that they want to be different. They talked about it all offseason. Hey, we want to be more aggressive with Patrick Mahomes. We want to have that explosive playability back. And they've shown that. We've seen it with like Tyquan Thornton. A lot of these guys that maybe don't have the talent of Tyreek Hill, but they've been attacking downfield a lot more. They're 8.3 compared to 6.3 average yards per attempt downfield. So I think that Tyreek Hill could do some damage if he did go to Kansas City. We get maybe not what he was back in the day when he was the overall wide receiver 1. But right now, Miami, he was wide receiver 20 points per game last year with Tua Tagovailoa. When he was out, it was a lot worse. And so far this year, he's barely a top 30 guy. There hasn't been too much change. So I would very much like that for that to happen for fantasy reasons. But I'm still hesitant on the likelihood of it does happening.
All right, Joel, let's take a look at some of the Sunday action, particularly quarterback. Give me a quarterback that you're boldly starting this weekend. Who is it? Why?
I'm going right back to Drake May. I've been a Drake May fan for a long time in college, rookie year, this year, and he's got a Pittsburgh team that I think most people would naturally think like, oh, that's a really good or a really bad matchup for Drake May. It's a really good matchup for the Steelers. But they haven't really lived up to the hype, or at least the hype that we saw from last year. They were number 1 against fantasy quarterbacks last year. They've played Justin Fields and Sam Darnold, which if you told me in week 3 to guess how they would be doing against quarterbacks, I would say they're probably number 1 again. They are 28th. So it hasn't been good for Pittsburgh, which is a great sign for Drake May. And the one main difference I've seen, because it's a completely new offense this year for the Patriots, is they have been deliberately rushing him more on the design carries. Last year, he scrambled a ton, a ridiculous amount. Like the only guy that did more was actually Jaden Daniels. So he scrambled a ton, and we got that rushing volume that way, but they never designed work for him at all. The last 5 games, though, the very end of last season, and then the first 2 games of this year, they've been designing those rushing carries a lot more. He had 3 last week, 10 in these last 5 games. Before that, he had 1 in the previous 9 games, his first 9 games of his career. So last week, 10 rushing attempts overall. If you add in that scrambling, that was a career high. The week before that, he had 46 passing attempts, which led the week. So the volume has been incredible. The matchup isn't as scary as maybe it once was. This offense is slowly getting their feet under them. They had a great week last week against the Dolphins, but I'm not too scared of this matchup. I love the volume for Drake May, love the talent even more. So I'm a believer.
All right, same question, but with the running back position. Is there a sneaky running back out there that could help you in your matchup this weekend?
Maybe a little more sneaky last week, but I would go Jordan Mason. Aaron Jones is now injured, so he's not going to be playing in this game against Cincinnati, but I would be confidently starting Jordan Mason just about everywhere. It is a really good matchup. The key to this matchup, I would say, would be his receiving, actually, which In San Francisco last year, when he was a starter, he averaged 16 points per game. So we always want to be starting a guy that's averaging that many points in your starting lineup. But he didn't get too much in the receiving game. And same thing, a lot of the rumors in the offseason was Kevin O'Connell, hey, we want to get this guy involved in the receiving. And he's kind of put his money where his mouth is a little bit. The targets haven't really been there, but they had Aaron Jones, who's an incredible receiving back, and they still went Jordan Mason about half the time in terms of who's running those pass routes, who's getting that receiving work overall. So when he is in there, he had 100% of the snaps once Aaron Jones left the game. He can both have that receiving along with the rushing threat. So we're looking at the matchup. The Bengals, they're 30th against running backs, but a lot of that has come through the receiving. 2 didn't have touchdown last week through the air. Etienne, same thing. Sampson had 8 receptions in week 1. So that is potential there. But then the other one is they aren't the greatest against the ground too in terms of that Bengals defensive line. They're going to be without Shamar Stewart, that talented rookie first-round pick. He picked up an injury, and he was one of their better run defenders already. So I think it gives Jordan Mason and what should be maybe another run-heavy day without J.J. McCarthy. They weren't throwing too much before, obviously. But they got Carson Wentz in there. I would expect a heavy dose of Jordan Mason and what's going to be a good matchup.
All right, so let's just put my fan hat on for a second here. I told everybody to go draft
Good.
Ashton Jeanty, especially based on like Chip Kelly's offense in college. I felt good about this. Ashton Jeanty going to be a world beater.
Yeah.
It has sucked through first 2 weeks. So, like, what are we doing now? Like, where do we go?
I'm going to try to give you some faith here, or at least some hope. I do believe that Chip Kelly, I want to give him some time. Like, it's only the second game in. The offensive line has not been very good. So that's the main thing. But Chip Kelly, he's done really well in the past with some offensive lines that aren't the greatest. So if there's anybody that I would trust as a coach, it would be Chip Kelly in this perfect situation or imperfect situation. But Ashton Jeanty in particular, right now, the reason week 3 I have a lot of faith in particular with this matchup is he is dead last in his yards before contact per attempt. He's getting hit in the backfield more than anybody in the NFL, which sucks because we can see the talent. If we're watching the games, we know he's good. Even the numbers that missed tackles forced per attempt, that stat, he's still top 5 in the NFL right now. It just hasn't been the greatest offensive line play in the rushing game overall. But they got Washington this week. And the thing that was all offseason, everybody was talking about the problem with Washington would be their run defense. How bad is it really going to be? Can they stop anybody? That secondary got a lot better, but they can't really stop anybody on the ground, can they? And that has proven to be true so far. So Ashton Jeanty is last in yards before contact per attempt. Washington is last on the defensive side. So you're hoping that it's kind of last versus last, and that meets somewhere in the middle for Jeanty. Gives him a little bit more room to roam. He's still getting the volume, and he still should. Maybe a little lower passing than we would like, but compared to the other running backs, like they got Lobb, they got Zamir White, 2 guys that I don't think are ever going to really take much of that rushing work. I think he should be set up well for week 3 to have at least a little bit more room, maybe that breakout game, but just overall a solid day.
You mentioned Jordan Mason in that Vikings-Bengals matchup. That's also the premier wide receiver matchup of the weekend. My 2 favorites, Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. Sexy. Jake Browning versus Carson Wentz. Not so sexy. So if you had to pick one of those receivers who you would trust more, if you had the luxury of starting one over the other, who would you pick? Who outperforms the other, Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase?
It's a great question, and it is a very sad question that we have to be asking in week 3. I would go Jamar Chase right now. I think he has shown us more, and in particular, the Bengals have shown us more with this. His volume right now is still really good. Even with the 3 quarters of Jake Browning, he came in, and it was kind of different than 2023. When we saw Jake Browning in 2023, Jamar Chase, his volume wasn't as good. The target share drops a little bit, but more so the production wasn't nearly as good. Only averaged about 12 points per game with Browning. But after Burrow went down, Browning came in, and they still deliberately got Jamar Chase the ball. Multiple screens, little jet sweeps, different things to get him involved, and a lot of those easy short routes for Jake Browning to just get the ball in Jamar Chase's hands at least. It wasn't the same for T. Higgins, all that. But for Jamar Chase, still gives him enough room where he had the number 1 or the highest amount of yards after catch last year. He's got the capability if we can just get him the ball in his hands. Where Jefferson, even with J.J. McCarthy, like his volume has been okay, especially when you're comparing it to the other Vikings players, but that passing volume hasn't been high. We get a new quarterback. It is more of an unknown. Carson Wentz we haven't seen this year in this offense at all in general. And Jefferson right now, Chase is the wide receiver 6 still. Jefferson is barely inside that top 30. So for this matchup in particular, I trust Chase more. I think it's a little easier to get him involved with a backup quarterback that maybe doesn't want to throw deep as much, doesn't want to make those downfield aggressive shots. So hopefully Carson Wentz, and I have faith to an extent, mainly because the coaching in Minnesota, not as much because of Carson Wentz, but I have faith there that they can still do well with Justin Jefferson. I would start him. Maybe bench guys like a TJ Hawkinson. I would think about benching T. Higgins. But out of the two, it would be Jamar Chase by a little bit.
We always trust you. You always start for us. Joel, we appreciate your time, man. Thanks for hanging out with us this week. Hopefully Ashton Genty turns it around for fantasy purposes, of course. Thanks for the time, man. We appreciate you.
Nothing personal. Yep, thank you, guys.
Thanks, Joel.
That's great. We'll keep you updated on it. But in the meantime, are we sleeping on the best division in the NFL? We'll tell you about it next on Yahoo Sports Daily. Welcome back to hour number 2 of Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fett, and I'm Jason Fitz. Got a lot to get into this hour, so we'll start it like we always do, with 3 points. What is on your mind, my friend?
News updates.
A little bit of college football news. The Colorado Buffaloes are taking on Wyoming this weekend, and it was announced that Caden Salter, their initial starter going into this season, will get the starting job as the Buffaloes take on Wyoming this weekend. Now, Caden Salter initially kind of struggled in their first week matchup in a loss to Georgia Tech. Caden Salter, 17 of 28, 159 yards and a touchdown. And then Colorado's week 2 matchup, they went through the gauntlet and kind of went through all of their quarterback options. And it was actually the guy that we really hadn't been talking about, Ryan Staub, who looked in the best in that week 2 matchup. So Ryan Staub got the start against Houston on the road in a loss, a 36-20 loss. Ryan Staub again struggled, only 19 of 35, 204 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. So they are going back to their guy, the Liberty transfer, Caden Salter. Now, Deion Sanders has spoken with the media and said, I have an idea, and I have a very good grasp of how I want to approach this quarterback position. I understand Deion Sanders is an incredibly good coach. I do not doubt that Deion Sanders has a good understanding of how his quarterbacks work and how he wants to handle this quarterback situation. But I always believe the old adage, if you have two quarterbacks, you have no quarterback. And it's not necessarily the best thing, or historically, it has not been the best thing for college football programs to go back and forth. One week you're the starter, and the next week another starter is the starter, and another quarterback in the room is the starter. So I think the thing that I'm looking at with this Colorado team is to find some consistency at the quarterback position. Because the worst feeling that a quarterback can have is be so afraid to take risks or make mistakes in fear that they'll lose their job the next week. And that's exactly what it has been in Colorado, is a revolving door at the quarterback position. So can Caden Salter do enough this weekend against Wyoming to prove that he should take the starting job? The last thing anyone in that Colorado locker room wants, to build consistency and to build wins on top of wins, is to have another change at the quarterback position if Caden Salter doesn't show consistency week in or week out, or play in or down in and play in and down out.
And typically when you have that revolving door at the quarterback position, people start to question whether the coach is handling it the right way. It'll be interesting to see if we start to question whether or not the coach is handling it the right way. All right, I'll take you to my first point of this hour, and it's an NFC matchup we've got. Remember the Beastquake game? Who doesn't remember the Beastquake game? Well, we get version 2 of it. Possibly we've got running backs galore going at it when we've got New Orleans at Seattle. Now, obviously, this is a bit of Kenneth Walker, Alvin Kamara. We got these sorts of running back names in it. But I think the real question in this game is Seattle any good? Which, by the way, isn't the first year that we've been asking this question. If you look back at last year, the first year under Michael McDaniel as a head coach, sing your Doobie Brothers song here, we couldn't really figure out how good the Seahawks were. One week it looked good. The next week it didn't. Looked like a couple of plays, one week in and out was the reason that they would win or lose. Couldn't really get a finger on the pulse of this team. I don't know after 2 weeks if we really have a finger on the pulse of the Seahawks even now. I mean, fact is, they lose week 1 to San Francisco in a game that they could have won, and then they absolutely take down Pittsburgh in week 2, but Pittsburgh played incredibly poorly. At 1-1, there's still a lot that's not yet proven for the Seahawks team, but what you have now is opportunity. The Saints are, if not one of the worst teams in the entire NFL. This is the sort of game that should be a beer game. Seahawks fans should be sitting with their feet up in the fourth quarter, drinking a beer, not worried about the outcome. I'm interested to see if this team takes that next step. The NFC West, as we will get into, looks particularly good this year. And while it looks particularly good, what you don't want to do is lose ground to everybody else. A loss to the Saints would already be inexcusable for anybody this year. But a loss to the Saints when you are 1-1 and you're trying to keep pace in a division that could end up being pretty damn good is the sort of thing that sends your season the wrong direction. I'm not sure yet that we know enough about Seattle to know if they're any good. I'm not sure if we know enough yet about Mike McDaniel to know if he's a really good head coach. What I am sure of are these are the sorts of games that give us an additional data point, and that data point can help us finally answer those questions. Speaking of the NFC West, let's get to it because, I mean, while we were all not paying attention, Seattle's 1-1, right? Arizona, sure, they've beaten 2 bad teams, but they're 2-0. The San Francisco 49ers, with Mac Jones as their quarterback, are 2-0, and the Rams are 2-0. Carolina, are we sleeping on this? Like, is this actually the most interesting division in the NFL, and we're just not talking about it?
It very well could be. I mean, you just look at the competition there and the depth in that division. I think we absolutely should be talking more about the NFC West. And I think that we should be talking about the teams that we really hadn't initially talked about. What dominated our discussion surrounding the NFC West was, will it be the 49ers or will it be the Rams? I don't think that the Cardinals are a better team than the Los Angeles Rams, but sometimes you just need a little bit of luck, and sometimes that luck comes in the form of your schedule. And the Arizona Cardinals have an incredibly manageable schedule. Yes, they took down New Orleans and Carolina, 2 teams that I think could potentially be in contention for the number 1 overall pick, or will have a top 5 pick in the draft this upcoming year. But now they go on the road to San Francisco. It'll be Mac Jones, and it will not be Brock Purdy. You have the advantage of playing a backup quarterback. They play Tennessee, and they play Jacksonville, and they play Houston, who don't necessarily look like world beaters, and the Falcons, who also don't necessarily look like world beaters. They play Cincinnati at the end of the season. What does Cincinnati look like at that point after Joe Burrow is out for 3 months? So you see a lot of advantages in Arizona's schedule. So I think that we should be talking more about the Arizona Cardinals being a sneaky kind of dark horse contender for the playoffs if they're able to beat up on the bad teams and steal a couple of wins against teams and games that they will not be favored in. I think I look at the Seahawks. Who are they at this point? 2 weeks in can be incredibly difficult. You have one good week, one not so great week. What are you? I think with Sam Darnold at the helm, you can believe they can at least find some consistency because Sam Darnold was awfully consistent in the regular season last year. So yes, I think that we should be talking more about the NFC West to be a multi-bid division in the playoffs.
I think it's a fair question to ask if this is the most interesting division in football, but I don't think it's the best. And when we start talking about more than one playoff spot, I think right now that I have trust issues with this entire division. I mean, maybe not the Rams. Maybe I'll put the Rams on the side, but I'm not even sure about that. Like, I love to say this, but right? Like, I got a but on the 49ers. Mac Jones is playing. Plus, the injury bug just consistently hits this team. We wondered coming into the season, would it continue? The answer is yes, it has continued. And I don't trust any team that's battling injury issues throughout. If we're talking about the number of games lost to starters throughout the course of the season, that usually means your season didn't go all that great. And while I love the thought that the 49ers get healthy and go on a run, just the fact that they're having to trust Mac Jones right now, and we don't know how long that will be, makes me a little bit hesitant. What about the Cardinals? I can say, but they're the Cardinals. They always fall apart. Right? The Cardinals actually, I think, maybe the fewest number of questions right now. The only question is, can the Cardinals not Cardinal? And I hate taking previous years and using that, lumping it into why this year's team won't be particularly successful. But we see Kyler Murray there on the screen. Like, I really don't know if Kyler Murray is him. Like, Kyler Murray is him in the world of okays. Like, if we're taking the okay quarterbacks and you're like, yeah, we got one of those. Yeah, he's it. Like, that's who Kyler Murray is.
That's what the kids these days called mid fits.
Yeah, okay. Isn't that 6'7"? Isn't that the way that works now? I don't understand 6'7". I'm just using things out of context.
I don't. I'm too old for that one. I know him. I know mid, but 6'7",
yeah.
You lost me.
Now, well, here, I'm just trying to help. All right, so we'll say that he's a mid 6'7", not his height. He wishes, maybe closer to 5'7" quarterback. All right, so that's I'm just being honest. I got a but on that. The Seahawks, I just said, like, there's some good, there's some bad. Sam Darnold, I'm not sure is really going to be any good. Like, I got questions on the Seahawks. So maybe the one team I don't have big question marks about are the Rams, but still, I can't forget the back conversations we were having, right? Like, I can't forget that they've got a quarterback that we were wondering if his back was going to hold up all year. So I think the Rams maybe have the simplest questions to answer. But if we're asking, like, are they going to get multiple teams in the playoffs? I don't know how the rest of the NFC is going to shape up. What I do think is that the NFC West is going to end up with a bunch of teams that are somewhere between 9-8 and 8-9, which makes them interesting, but it doesn't make them good.
Exactly. Like, this is the kind of division that there are multiple teams in the playoffs. I wouldn't be surprised. I also wouldn't be surprised if this division is just meh. Interestingly, meh, just based off of the record. And you bring up a good point about the rest of the conference. I mean, the NFC is pretty stacked. Like, looking at the NFC East, I think the Eagles are a playoff team. The Commanders can be a playoff team. The Cowboys can be a playoff team. Hell, if Russ cooks like he did against the Cowboys, the Giants can be a playoff team. Don't at me. The Packers can be a playoff team. Will be a playoff team. The Lions can be a playoff team. The Bucks are a playoff team. Like, how many did I just name there? I think that may have just been 7 in and of itself, and we didn't even get to the NFC West yet. So I think the way that we've talked about the AFC for so many years with Lamar and Joe Burrow and Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, that the NFC may have that depth that the AFC has had in so many years. The top of the AFC is elite, but who else underneath the elite of the AFC is really kind of, a contender? I look at the NFC and any of those teams that I just named, Philly, Green Bay, Detroit, Tampa Bay, the Rams, if Matthew Stafford's able to stay healthy for the majority of a 17-game season, I think any of those teams can get hot and make a run in the postseason.
But the thing of it is, we will talk about this division the way we talk about games. How often do we see a bad football game with the dramatic ending and we say, oh, man, that was a great game? No, it wasn't. It was a great 4 minutes of football on a game that was just crappy from top to begin. It was a great 4 minutes.
Yeah.
This is going to be an interesting division that we need to pay attention to because I'm not sure any of these teams separate. But to your point, I'm going to come up with this new brand, right? I'm going to use my initials, JF. It's my new acronym. The brand is just fine. Like, we're not going to do anything particularly well. It's just fine. And so what is the NFC West? It's just fine. The Seahawks are just fine. Like, there is some level to me of all of this. It will be interesting, though, and that's why we'll pay attention. And that is what the NFL does better than anybody. They take mid and make it interesting because it comes down to the wire. So, I think the difference between, for example, the NFC West and the AFC West is that, wow, yes, the AFC West has plenty of buts too. Sure. Yeah, but is Bo Nix really the answer? Are we also going to bet against all of this? I don't know. Like, I think the AFC West has more solutions to their questions right now than the NFC West does. So when we talk about most interesting division in football, I think the NFC West is an interesting division. I just think the AFC West right now, 2 weeks in, is a more interesting division because good or bad, we will pay attention to the Chiefs. Whatever happens to Kansas City is interesting. Whatever happens to the Broncos is interesting. So in my mind, interesting, yes, the NFC West is more interesting than we thought. It's just not better and it's not the most.
The NFC West also, while interesting, it's not very sexy. Like, who is the sexiest player in the NFC West? Like, when I look at the NFC East, you have Jaden Daniels, and you have Scary Terry, you have CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, Malik Neighbors, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley, Jalen Hurts. I mean, like, that is a sexy, star-studded division. When the NFC South isn't overly sexy, but the Baker story is always one that I think people can fall in love with. He is a superstar in this league. You had Emeka Egbuka, who's a rising star. Mike Evans, Alvin Kamara on a crappy team. I mean, like, who pops off the page as, a headline commanding type of player, superstar, celebrity type of player in the NFC West? Yes, we love Puka Nacua. Yes, I think Jackson Smith and Jigba is so incredibly fun to watch. Yes, Matthew Stafford is probably a future Hall of Famer. We can have that debate on a different day. But, like, there's no true superstar, it feels like, in the NFC West compared to the rest of the conference.
To your point, if you walked in to your favorite Buffalo Wild Wings this Sunday and it's full of NFL fans and you just had those big sideline fat heads and you put up Jaden and you put up Saquon and you ask everybody to just yell out who it is, you're going to get response after response after response. As good as I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is, for example, or can be,
yes,
if you just pop him up there, is everybody being like, oh, yeah, like, we'll turn the game to that one if you're in a random
I think so.
I don't know. I think if you just win in Q rating on I didn't watch college football. If I'm one of those guys that doesn't watch college football, I just watch the NFL, and I'm asked what number is Marvin Harrison Jr. for the Cardinals, how many just random NFL fans can name that number? I don't know. Like, the funny thing is when you talk about sexiness, Q rating, like Devontae has that, Puka has that. I think, to some, Darnold has that because of just, so Bradford has that because time in the league. So you go across the league, like
McCaffrey.
There are McCaffrey.
Kittle.
McCaffrey certainly has that. So those,
but
Kittle,
they're always
those
hurt.
Yeah, that is fair. How many? Maybe that's the better question. If you walked into a sports bar at 4:25 today and you said, "Everybody, let's flock to the Cardinals game," how many people are like, "Ooh, I want in on that"? You're right. There's a little, there's a little bit of a lack of when the 49ers are who the 49ers can be, and they're the healthiest version of the 49ers. They are the answer to this question. That is, yes. You are right. The 49ers and the Rams. If the Rams are healthy, I think the Rams are a Super Bowl caliber team. So I'm not over here just trashing the division, even though that sounds like I'm trashing the division. I have trust issues. I have trust issues with the division overall.
It's a chaotic division. It has at least the makings of being a chaotic division because, to your point, there are so many buts that I think the 49ers can be a Super Bowl contender. Yeah, but they're always hurt. And I cannot trust the 49ers to not always be hurt. I think the Rams can make a run in the playoffs and even potentially be a Super Bowl contender. Yeah, but Matthew Stafford has a back issue and he's a cajillion years old. The Cardinals They're always really easy to buy into in the beginning of the season. Yeah, but you can't trust Kyler Murray and you can't trust that Arizona team. Same thing in Seattle. Show me more. I want to see exactly what this team is and who they are. What is their identity? Is Sam Darnold, just a flash in the pan in Minnesota and he goes back to kind of just being a average quarterback at best in this league? It's just there is so little to trust in the NFC West.
I'm pretty sure I combined Matthew Stafford and Sam Darnold to create Sam Bradford again, who hasn't been in the league in a minute. That just says everything. There we go. That's what I did. You're welcome, America. That happens.
Wow.
All right, let's get to some sexy matchups in college football. There is just some chaos coming, and we'll break it down for you next on Yahoo Sports Daily. Before you make the decision, the grass isn't always greener. Jackson Arnold's dad told him that before he left Oklahoma. Arnold chose Auburn and is now returning to Norman, where OU is on fire with John Mateer. That from On3 Sports as we look at some of the best matchups over the course of the weekend on Yahoo Sports Daily. Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz, and certainly the Jackson Arnold Bowl, which just feels weird to say. What we have is two ranked teams here. Number 22, Auburn, who surprised a lot of people getting to the point that they are, versus number 11, Oklahoma, who looks like they may have a Heisman candidate in a matchup, Caroline, with massive SEC implications. So give me the one storyline in this game that matters the most to you.
That's exactly what you just said. It's the Jackson Arnold Bowl. The Jackson Arnold transferred from Oklahoma to Auburn this past offseason. And just for people that aren't familiar with Jackson Arnold and his recruitment, he was the guy. Like, he was the 5-star answer to everyone's prayers, the next OU quarterback to win a Heisman, the guy that was going to get OU to the mountaintop, the guy that was going to lead Oklahoma to the college football playoff and to a national championship. Like, Jackson Arnold. Whoa, we're mixing up all these quarterbacks' last names today. Jackson Arnold was like the Messiah in Norman. He was the guy. That's the reason why Dylan Gabriel transferred from Oklahoma to Oregon, was because they were ready to go with the young gun. The fans were clamoring for Jackson Arnold. And if you weren't paying attention to Oklahoma last season, it was a brutal season. It was a rough season. Now, they did find a way to beat Alabama, but Oklahoma really, really struggled. Jackson Arnold struggled. They had a ton of injuries. Their 5 leading receivers were out with an injury. The offensive line was riddled with injuries. It was just a brutal year. Whether it was injuries or whether it was Arnold himself, it was just a bad year in Norman. And I think that Jackson Arnold was hearing a lot of the narratives. He was, went from being the guy to the guy they couldn't get out of Norman fast enough. So he transferred to Auburn. I think Hugh Freeze has been a coach that's been looking for a quarterback, and Jackson Arnold was the quarterback just looking for a fresh start. So it kind of felt like the perfect marriage on paper. So Jackson Arnold makes his return to Norman. And I think that it's kind of like an ex-boyfriend, ex-girlfriend situation that Jackson Arnold wants to go back to Norman and prove to everybody, like, look, I'm not the scrub that a lot of you think that I am. Just because I struggled in Norman last season doesn't mean that I'm not a legitimate starting quarterback in the SEC that can't come into your house and prove all of you wrong. But Fitzy, I don't think he's going to do that. I love the story. I love the fact that we have some, a revenge factor here. I don't think that that's going to come to fruition. And the number one reason probably is because nobody knows what gets Jackson Arnold rattled quite like Brent Venables. He knows how he ticks. He knows how he works. He knows, what's going to throw him off. He knows what he does well. So Brent Venables, being a defensive-minded guy, I think they're going to be able to kind of exploit that.
Jackson Arnold wants to step in and show the world that he can play at the highest possible level. I also, immediately following the show, want to go to the basketball hoop outside and dunk on a regulation-sized rim with the normal basketball. It's not going to happen because, A, I can't jump that high, and B, my tiny baby hands can only handle a child's basketball if I'm going to palm it. So, they're going to have to move it down.
You and Kenny Pickett.
Dunk at a 5-foot rim. I mean, 100%. Me and Kenny Pickett, we're like soul brothers. Look, Jackson Arnold can want all that he wants, but it's not going to happen. Oklahoma is going to roll in this game. Auburn is going to get destroyed. And I don't even think this is a close football matchup. I think this is the sort of game that reminds us all Auburn's not as good as we think, and Oklahoma's better than we think. And I'll go back to, I was watching our buddy Josh Pate on the Josh Pate Show, and he was talking about some of the charts that you can see on these Auburn passing numbers. And while right now people might look at it and say, no, Jackson Arnold's playing pretty well, look at the passing charts. Everything is at the line of scrimmage, behind the line of scrimmage. Everything is quick out, right and left. Brent Venables sees that too. Guys are open downfield. They just haven't been able to take advantage of it for Auburn. So Venables is smart enough to know what rattles Jackson Arnold, and he's also smart enough to see what's coming before it gets there. If Josh Pate, me, and everybody else covering college football sees these charts, what's Brent Venables going to do with it? So I think Oklahoma is going to have the right game plan from the outset to disrupt him, and they're going to roll in this. This is the sort of game that is over by the half. I don't even think it's a close football game. So, for the love of compelling results, I want this. I wouldn't be surprised if Oklahoma wins by 3 scores.
The way Auburn keeps this game close is if they do something that they haven't done so far this season. And that's, like you just said, it's air the ball out. Because this Oklahoma defense, it is good enough to take away what you do best. And what this Auburn team does best is run the football. Whether it's Jackson Arnold himself or Jeremiah Cobb, their running back, they're running for almost 6 yards a carry, Fitzy. So I don't think Oklahoma is going to let them come in there and run all over them. But what this Auburn team has, that maybe some Auburn teams in the past have not, is dynamic playmakers that can stretch the field. Eric Singleton Jr., Cam Coleman. Cam Coleman, coming out of high school, was a higher rated recruit than Ryan Williams at Alabama. We all know Ryan Williams. He's a gazelle. He's a ballerina out there in the football field. Cam Coleman is just as good, if not better. He just hasn't had, he hasn't been in the offense or hasn't had the quarterback to be able to really show the world his ability. So they have those receivers. If Auburn keeps this game close, it's because Jackson Arnold airs the ball out much more than he has so far this season, and he takes advantage of those playmakers that he has.
Okay, I don't think that'll be a game. Talk me into Tulane Ole Miss, because every time I talk about Ole Miss, I decide that they're going to roll. So tell me why Tulane's going to keep it close.
That's the thing with Ole Miss. They either roll by 4 or 5 touchdowns, or they stay in the game and it's way closer than it ever should be. The reason why this game could be close, well, first of all, these two teams played in New Orleans in 2023, and it was a tied game going into the fourth quarter. I mean, Tulane led at the half. It was only a 3-point game, so it's not like this, and I know that was 2023. These are two different teams. I totally and completely understand that. But this isn't just, any group of 5 cupcake team that's on Ole Miss's schedule. Jake Retzlaff may be the X factor for Tulane. Jake Retzlaff, you may have remembered that name or recognized that name from his time at BYU. He led BYU to an undefeated season until mid-November happened. So sorry to our colleague Emmy Franks for bringing that up. But BYU was a legitimate college football playoff contender until late into the season, and it's because of Jake Retzlaff. This Ole Miss defense is bad. It's bad. It has been bad through 3 games at least. They cannot get pressure on the quarterback. The secondary has been picked apart. And Jake Retzlaff at least has enough experience and has seen enough football and has the ability to take advantage of that defense. I still think Ole Miss wins. Talent wins out at the end of the day, and it's at Ole Miss. It's in Vaught-Hemingway. So I think Ole Miss wins this one, but Tulane has the horses to be able to keep this game close. And even if they lose this game, if this is a close game, if Tulane's able to cover, I think that in and of itself is a good enough little bullet point on Tulane's resume to be that group of 5 representative in the college football playoff.
Book your nap. This thing's over in the second half. Ole Miss big. All right.
Come
what
on,
about this
Fitz.
one?
I'm trying to make these things interesting.
We got
Come
one though.
on.
We got one. Number 9, Illinois at number 19, Indiana. Big Ten football at night. Come on, give this to me. Inject it in my vein. This is a big game. All right, so what's the most interesting storyline for you?
So this is the battle of who is the 4th best team in the Big Ten. And I know that doesn't sound sexy, but it's Ohio State, it's Penn State, it's Michigan. Put them in whatever order you want to put them in. That's not my job. But those are the 3 best teams in the Big Ten. Now, this game will decide who could potentially get that 4th bid from the Big Ten, assuming that the Big Ten does, in fact, get 4 teams into the college football playoff. But this is the game. Neither of these teams get Ohio State on the rest of their schedule. So favorable schedules down the stretch. I think it's much more favorable for Illinois. So that is what is kind of, what's at stake here. College football playoff is potentially at stake for one of these 2 teams. And these 2 teams play very different styles of football. Indiana doesn't play like a typical Big Ten, pound and grind it out kind of style. Indiana wants to air the ball out. Indiana wants to play kind of a more pro style RPO type of system. Whereas Illinois, it's as Big Ten as it gets, baby. You've got the beefy guys up front. They want to run the football. They want to play really tough defense. I am shocked, frankly, that Indiana is favored by as many as 5.5 points. I think this Illinois team plays such sound football. Their starting quarterback has yet to throw an interception. Luke Altmaier, he's played a ton of football. They know they can beat you in several different ways, and they have such a strong identity. Whereas I think Indiana's still trying to figure things out a little bit. They didn't have a ton of retention from that college football playoff team that they had last season. So I think Illinois is not just able to cover. I think Illinois is able to go into Bloomington and get a win here.
Fun fact, Luke Altmaier responsible for 3 touchdowns in each of the Fighting Illini's first 3 wins. So you got to shut him down. But I'll always go back to this. Fernando, that's a fun name to say. Mendoza is the quarterback that everybody's falling in love with. There were some mock drafts that had him as the top pick in the NFL draft before the season started, and everybody said, who is Fernando? That's a fun name to say. Mendoza, that would be the quarterback of Indiana. He went 19-20 against Indiana State. Let's calm down. Who cares? But this is the sort of game, especially with Cignetti as his coach. Nope. I think Indiana is going to come out. Indiana's going to roll. They're going to show the world. But you're right.
Roll?
Roll. They're going to win. They're going to win by a touchdown. They'll win by a touchdown. I like them by a touchdown. But I will say this. The question is, can Illinois control the line? Like you said, they're going to try and they're going to ground and pound. Can they hold the ball so long that it disrupts Indiana's opportunity to ever get any rhythm? So we'll see how it plays out. I feel like we're on opposite ends on some of this. It will be exciting to see, and you are right. The winner of this game, Illinois, Indiana, is definitely in the driver's seat to get a college football playoff spot. A lot on the line from Big Ten nighttime football. I'm here for all of it. We're also here for some Vegas insights. We'll do it next. Ben Fawkes is going to join us, and we'll figure out what to make of some of the lines and action that we're seeing over the course of the week. So we've only had a couple of weeks of NFL action, but so far these are the teams, as Ben Fawkes shows you, who have failed to cover against the spread. You might see an interesting name there if you were following Thursday Night Football, because the Dolphins 0-2 against the spread. At the same time, Ben Fawkes also points out the best NFL teams against the spread this season. I might notice that the Bills are there, 2-0 against the spread. Well, in case you haven't noticed, there's a massive spread on tonight's game. So we're joined now by Ben Fawkes, hanging out with us this morning, Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. Let's get right to it. You've got the Bills favored by 12.5. So how are bettors approaching that massive number?
Yeah, and look, I think it's always fun to look at those against the spread numbers, right? Obviously, we've only had 2 weeks, but is indicative of usually teams disappointing versus teams maybe overperforming expectations. And so certainly to see the Chiefs, right, at 0-2 against the spread is interesting. In this game, the Dolphins were a team before the season, a lot of wise guys down on. They had that win total, I think, open at 8.5 down to 7.5 with that sharp action. And they've looked pretty bad the first 2 weeks. This is a monster number. Was 8.5 in kind of the look ahead lines, reopened 10.5 up to 12.5. There were some sharps that took that at plus 12.5. So at some books, 11.5, some books 12 or 12.5. But the public is all over the Bills here, as you can understand. Josh Allen, I believe 7-0 in his career at home in the regular season against the Dolphins, only 4-3 against the number. But this is going to be a game everyone is going to have in potentially a teaser, definitely a money line parlay to the weekend, starting with the Bills. Ed Oliver out, Matt Milano out on defense, so a couple concerns potentially for the Bills. But that Dolphins defense has been 28th in DVOA through the first 2 weeks. They have a ton of injuries in the secondary as well, and they just haven't been good against the Bills. So in these divisional matchups, sometimes familiarity means a closer game, and sometimes one team just isn't a good matchup for the other team, and that's generally what we've seen when the Dolphins play the Bills, especially in Buffalo.
I know we have so many great games this weekend, but I always believe it's never too early to put some futures in. Looking at NFL MVP, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson are co-favorites, both at plus 325 at BetMGM. Safe bets, but maybe not the best value there. So maybe looking at some better value picks. Jordan Love at plus 800. Justin Herbert also at plus 800. That plucky little underdog, Patrick Mahomes, at plus 1,800. And Baker Mayfield at plus 2,000. Of those four, or maybe, some of these guys with better odds, who do you like out of those that I just named?
So I think of those, you're very, very, very rarely, if ever, going to get Patrick Mahomes at 18-1 to win the MVP, especially after only 2 weeks, right? And knock on wood, no injury situations or anything else. So you can make a strong argument with the Chiefs that if they do come back, right, and look like the Chiefs of the last few years, and certainly what we've been accustomed to with Patrick Mahomes, remember, he's never at least not made the AFC Championship game as a starter. That's the baseline, is making the AFC Championship game. So it's very premature to talk about them missing the playoffs, anything else like that. They certainly haven't looked like the Chiefs offense we come to expect over the first couple of weeks. But if they do come back, given the fact he has no weapons, and given the fact they have no running game, and given the fact the defense is not very good, he would be the one certainly who's going to get the lion's share of the support, and therefore I think would be a good bet at 18-1. Another one further down the board I was looking at a bit, because with these guys, you want to get them maybe before their breakout game a bit. We're not necessarily 100% before the breakout game because they just demolished the Bears, but Jared Goff is 50-1. And the Lions, if you think they're coming back and that week 1 against the Packers was a little aberration, they get to play the Ravens, they play the Chiefs, the Bucks, Commanders, Eagles, Packers, obviously in the division again, and the Rams. So they have a ton of big games, some primetime games. If he plays well, that 50-1 number is going to come down a lot.
All right, Ben, you just gave us all of the reasons we've talked about that maybe the Chiefs are broken, but I refuse to give up on Kansas City because, well, they always find a way. So is this a good time now? I mean, they're 6.5-point favorite against the Giants. Is this a good time to be looking around and trying to figure out what to do for Chiefs betting for the rest of the season?
Yeah, so I got a piece coming up a little later this morning on the Chiefs, and just talked to a bunch of odds makers, talked to some handicappers, basically about that question. And then the big question, is it time to worry, right, about the Chiefs? I think the answer is basically let's wait and see. right? So obviously you never want to start 0-2, but there's a certain level of respect kind of with Mahomes, and you just have to give them the benefit of the doubt, even as bad as they've looked. You know the offensive weapons are going to come back. Rashee Rice will come back after 6 weeks. Xavier Worthy will come back at some point, whether that's this weekend or next or in the near future. Obviously, Travis Kelce isn't getting younger. I think the big thing that people pointed out, which isn't something I had realized was as bad, is this defense has just not been good. They're actually dead last in success rate. I think they're 26th or so by DVOA. They've just been a really bad, poor defense, which I think also reflects on Philadelphia's offense last week. So you would say with the Chiefs as well, they also play the Ravens. They also play the Lions in week 6. They also have at Buffalo in week 9. So there's a chance for more losses. And I think then potentially a chance for even better Super Bowl odds if you still believe in them, where you're going to get probably more than 15-1. So probably a wait and see on the futures. I think in terms of the Giants game, this is going to be a massive decision for the books. Like we talked about with the Bills, with everyone with a money line parlay, everyone is also going to have a money line parlay or a teaser tied to the Chiefs, right? They can't possibly lose to the Giants. They can't possibly go 0-3. Just be careful. Just remember, they did beat, if we take a time machine back to week 4 of the 2023 season, they were going into that same stadium to face one Zach Wilson and the Jets as 8.5-point favorites. They did win that game, but if you remember, that was Patrick Mahomes with the slide. He didn't get in the end zone, so the Chiefs didn't cover. Jets backers covered, but that was a really close game, and a game before no one would say the Jets had any chance of winning that game, and it was a really close game. So just be a little careful with that Chiefs game against the Giants on Sunday.
And look, the Chargers have an opportunity this weekend to get a massive lead over the Chiefs and the rest of the division. They take on the Broncos, their third divisional game of the season in only 3 weeks. Chargers 3-point favorites over the Broncos. Denver has looked iffy. The Chargers have looked great. How are bettors attacking this one?
Yeah, Chargers certainly have been one of the surprise teams, and I think the Broncos were one of those off-season darlings, right? And they obviously very easily could be 2-0, really blew that game against the Colts, but haven't looked as good as you would like, kind of if you're backing them to win the AFC West or really be a Super Bowl contender. That was a pretty ugly game week 1 against the Titans as well, and that was at home against Cam Ward, a rookie in his first start. This really opened Chargers -2.5 at a lot of books, up to -3 at some books, still -2.5 at others. A lot of public money on the Chargers, as you would kind of expect, public betting what they saw last. And the Chargers have just been kind of workmanlike. It wasn't necessarily a dominant victory over the Chiefs, and it wasn't the prettiest victory over Fitz's Raiders, but they still got it done. They still covered the spread as the favorite last week, as an underdog in week 1. They've looked good, and bettors are kind of rewarding them. A lot of Chargers bets on the money line as well. So I think right now, in terms of that, who's the potential team, the AFC West, to unseat the Chiefs, the Chargers have certainly taken the lead. It's a long season, though. We'll see how it goes. But it's a big game. And obviously, if the Chiefs somehow lose and the Chargers win, and then they're 3-0 and the Chiefs are 3 back, then potentially you could be looking at that AFC West 9 straight division crowns for the Chiefs really in jeopardy.
How much, stick with this game for a second, because we've been hard on this show on Bo Nix, who looked particularly, I think, trashy week 1. He was terrible. So he looked better in week 2. So when you're Vegas and you're approaching a quarterback that was awful in 1 week and pretty good in the second week, fine in the next week, like how long does it take to get a sense of where quarterbacks are in this league? Like how does Vegas approach that inconsistency from particular players when they look at props, et cetera?
Yeah, I think with Bo Nix, some of it is generally Vegas odds makers looking right at the whole team, which also includes the head coach, Sean Payton, a top 5, top 10 head coach, offensive play caller, and expected also to have a really good defense, right? The defense has been disappointing, certainly in week 2. They were pretty good in week 1, especially put in some tough positions by that offense. But I think Bo Nix is the quarterback where he needs everything else, almost like a Kirk Cousins, right? You need everything else around him. He's not necessarily an elevator, a floor raiser, whereas someone like Justin Herbert, it's not like he has amazing weapons or has for a lot of his career. And sure, they haven't necessarily gotten it done in the playoffs or some of the bigger games that you would like, but he's just a guy who can get more done with less. and is always going to potentially raise that floor, right? Both as a scrambler, great arm talent. He has the prototypical body. So just when you're comparing quarterbacks, you would assume the floor for Justin Herbert is a lot higher than it is for Bo Nix, who doesn't necessarily have that arm strength, isn't necessarily as fast, isn't as big, and can't necessarily make all the throws that Justin Herbert can make, both, you know, within schedule, on and off schedule, and on and off platform. So they're just two different quarterbacks. Obviously, Sean Payton, this was his guy. This is who he wanted in the draft. So he clearly feels comfortable with him. And sometimes we see this, right, in the second year. It's always talked about, well, now you have a full year of film on the guy. We might be seeing that a bit with Bo Nix. I think the Broncos will get it straightened out. They have a ton of talent on both sides of the ball, but certainly they haven't looked impressive, and not nearly as impressive as the Chargers have through 2 weeks.
You tweeted just a couple of days ago about what I have to believe was a very optimistic Bears fan, an Illinois bettor who wagered $300,000 on the Bears over 8.5 wins. Now the Bears are sitting at 0-2. I always say can't go 9-8 without first going 0-2. I'm kidding. But how disappointing have the Bears been, at least from a betting perspective, in your opinion?
Yeah, they've been one of the more disappointing teams. And I should say, like, with this bet, I will say the sharp side was under 8.5 at a lot of sports books for bettors. So again, just because it's a big bet, generally that means it's not necessarily the sharpest person placing that bet, but somebody who does have a lot of money, and typically somebody who doesn't win a lot of bets. But obviously there's a lot of caveats there. But I will say the Bears, I think, to me, it was almost more disappointing in week 1 than it was week 2. Week 2 is a tough spot, right? You're going to Detroit to face a Lions team that was embarrassed in week 1 in the, you know, Tony Romo, Jim Nantz game against the Packers team in their own division. You're going into Detroit. That's a tough spot to play. You would figure the Lions are going to win there. Week 1 against the Vikings was a game they should have won. They dominated the game. I think the offense in between the first touchdown and maybe the second one they scored had like 9 straight possessions without any points. They were right there. There were a lot of offensive, you know, false start penalties, a lot of self-inflicted wounds from the offense. The Vikings defense is good as well, but a good team puts that game away, and it's at least a 2-possession, maybe 3-possession game. JJ McCarthy doesn't have a chance to come back in the fourth quarter. And the offense just has looked kind of the same as it did last season, which you would expect a little better under Ben Johnson. So I think that's been disappointing. The defense has been really disappointing. And we have seen kind of a flip in favorites of this game where the Bears opened a small favorite. Now the Cowboys a small favorite. And bettors, as you would expect, backing the Cowboys just based off of what that offense has looked like. The Bears right now through 2 weeks, according to DVOA, 28th on offense, 32nd, last on defense. They are the worst team in the league by DVOA through the first 2 weeks. So some of the advanced numbers don't like them. And obviously the betting market potentially soured after 2 weeks as well.
Man, those Bears fans that were in my mentions for not being positive enough about Chicago this summer should have been quiet through 2 weeks. I'm just saying. All right, Ben, we appreciate you so much. Check out his writing in Yahoo Sports, obviously. A great article coming out on the Chiefs today you'll want to check out. Ben, always appreciate your insights, man. Thanks so much for hanging out with us.
Have a good one, guys.
Thanks,
Ben.
Ben.
Fawkes giving us the latest, greatest from the betting side. Now we're going to figure out, it's Thursday. You know what's coming. Thirst Trap Thursdays. Trap games are all over the place. We'll tell you about them next. Oh, sometimes being too thirsty can come back to get you. Don't get caught sipping. Oh, that's the worst. It's the worst when you just think you're taking a little drink, all of a sudden you get caught, and then you realize, bam, it's right there on TV. And the number of times that I've been on my own couch and just choked on my own water, and then Annabelle looks at me like I'm an idiot. I feel this all the way to my core, Caroline.
Cover your mouth, David.
Now,
He's coughing like a little kid. Cover your mouth.
Well, basic manners. Manners 101. All right. Why did we show you that? Well, because you know what day it is. It's Thursday, and last week we unveiled it. Thirst Trap Thursdays. That's right. Each of us, each week, is going to identify one game on the weekend slate that stands out as a trap game. A possible, oh my God, we're overlooking it. Don't fall for it. Caroline, I will let you go first, my friend. Give me your Thirst Trap Thursday matchup.
I don't think that the Miami Hurricane fan base is too fond of me. I don't know why. I don't know what I did, and I'm going to make it worse. I am going to put Miami on upset alert. Could this Florida-Miami game be a trap game? And you might say, Caroline, you said last week. Oh my gosh.
Incredible. That Mario
That's a
Cristobal,
swamp thirst trap.
I mean, in the swamp with the helmet and the abs. The abs and the helmet does not take away from the abs. No, and then that look on Cristobal's face. Oh, that is so well done.
I mean, Sark is the one saying, hey, I don't record you in the bathroom. Looks like that might be a bathroom face there for Mario Cristobal. But I did say last week ahead of the LSU-Florida game that couldn't be a trap game because I don't believe that rivalry games can be trap games. Well, this is that. Miami and Florida, very much so, is a rivalry game. These two teams and these two fan bases hate each other. But I think this could be an exception to the rule because Florida is bad. So Miami could be overlooking a Florida team that lost back-to-back games against South Florida at home. Ooh, gut punch. And then lost on the road at LSU. No shame in that game, but they did so in a 5-interception performance from DJ Lagway. Ooh, I mean, just absolutely brutal. So maybe Miami is not approaching this rivalry game with the same amount of preparation or tenacity or anger that they normally would against Florida or any other rivalry. I also think Florida could be playing with desperation. And sometimes desperation can be an incredibly powerful thing. That Florida, if they lose to Miami, then you're just piecing together loss after loss after loss, and you start to get dejected. Maybe this team says, look, our opportunity to change the narrative on this team and change the trajectory on our season is going to Miami and taking down the Hurricanes. Nothing gives you optimism like taking down a rivalry like that. I also don't think that Billy Napier is going to put the ball in the hands of DJ Lagway like he did against LSU. I mean, the fact that he threw 5 interceptions and he continued to throw the football, I mean, just cut your losses and run the ball. Jaden Baugh, their starting running back, is running for 6 yards a carry. And do not sleep on this Florida defense. It is ranked 28th in all of college football right now. They can get a ton of pressure on the quarterback. And yes, I know pressure is not something that Carson Beck hasn't seen, but we have seen at least Carson Beck last year at Georgia. He has the ability to throw a whole bunch of interceptions, back-breaking interceptions that you just think to yourself, where in the world are you throwing the football? This Florida defense has been flying around even in losing efforts. So maybe, just maybe, Miami could be on upset alert. This could be a trap game. Now, I'll look like an idiot if/when Miami rolls by 5 touchdowns, but you're saying
the great thing is that what we know is that college football Twitter, particularly X, is so balanced and fair and reasonable in their response that if that happens, like I've never understood as a lifelong diehard fan of a team. I've never understood the need when your team wins to go try and find somebody you think was anti your team and then just blast them. Like my concept is celebrate with your brothers and sisters that all just watch the victory. That is not how college football works. So I pray for your
That's not good enough. You need revenge on all those who speak poorly on you.
I respect it. I respect that. Also, shout out, as we do every week on Thirst Trap Thursdays, got to shout out Doug Branson, one of the great people behind the scenes that does great Photoshop work. And that's really how I'm just excited to see where mine goes. I will admit I'm a coward. You went for a college football game. I'm scared of what college football fans will do when I do that. So instead, I'll go to, I don't know, fair and reasonable fans known as NFL fans for my Thirst Trap Thursday game. All right, what show was it that put the Green Bay Packers at number 1 in their power rankings? Oh, it was this show. It was both of us on this show that put the Green Bay Packers on the top of our power rankings, right? And what show is it that has repeatedly told you how much the Browns suck? It's this show. And that's why the perfect Thirst Trap Thursday, Packers versus the Browns. All right, look, I know. I just want to see Matt LaFleur getting after it. Oh, okay. Also
Okay, crop top Matt LaFleur.
Crop top LaFleur I like Myles Garrett coming over the fence behind him. Barker. Oh, I like that in the background. Also, why are they all taking selfies? So that's 2 for 2 today on selfies.
They're posting their thirst traps.
You know what? If you are that person that takes out the phone in the gym and takes a picture of yourself, I'm so happy that you are that proud of yourself. Just know everybody else in the room hates you. I just want you to know everybody else in the room is judging you. They do actually see you pull out the phone. They see you looking at yourself. Like I got that one guy at the gym that always pulls his shirt up like every day.
No.
Your abs yes, every day. Your abs look the same today that they did yesterday. All right, they're impressive. I get it. You've got them. I don't, but we don't need to see him again. I don't know why LaFleur. Also, the hair for LaFleur on this one is a delight. I love all of this.
So nicely coiffed.
As Mike Goldfarb has just pointed out to us, this is a LaFleur's trap. LaFleur's trap. There we go.
LaFleur's trap.
Okay, I'm going to walk you through this though. I'll
well
tell you
done,
why
Mike.
There's a chance of a trap game there, okay? Because obviously the Packers are a huge favorite, and they should be a huge favorite. Why? They're a better football team. But look at how they started their season. They start with the Lions. Of course, you're going to be amped up for that. You kick the snot out of the Lions. Congratulations. Next, you get the Commanders. You demoralize the Commanders on TV. Everybody watched it happen. We suddenly step back, and we're like, oh, my God, Washington needs to just take a step back and figure out what happened. You have absolutely crushed everyone. And in a couple of weeks, we get the big game, the game everybody's going to be paying attention to, the Micah Parsons revenge game, right? We get Packers and Cowboys, not this weekend, but the weekend after. So I got Micah Parsons revenge after I got 2 really good teams. And in the middle of all of it, I got a team that's so bad their own superstar says it's disgusting, right? Like I got a team so bad in the Browns that Myles Garrett, it took 2 weeks of Myles Garrett with this new paycheck to already be fed up with this situation in Cleveland. So now you have a Cleveland team that, they've got a defense that's plucky. I'm saying it condescendingly, but real. They got a defense that has some stars on it. It's plucky, but they got Joe Flacco. And they got an offense that nobody really believes in, and nobody's scared of the Cleveland Browns. That's exactly why I'm scared of this game. Human nature is still human nature. You got a Packers team that's come off of 2 big wins, and they got another big matchup coming in about a week. Oh, this feels like the ultimate trap game, and that makes it Thirst Trap third. Plus, it's a big point spread on that. -8. Like, I'm going out there. Like, I'm laying it on the line for this one. An 8-point spread, and I'm saying Thirst Trap Thursday. Let's go.
Calling Myles Garrett plucky. Now, that is bold, and I appreciate that because that man, nothing describes that man and those biceps quite like a plucky, cute little story. Oh, look at him. Oh, look at Myles Garrett. He's so cute. He's playing football out there doing his stuff. I don't hate this. And look, this is what makes trap games. When he just going out there doing his little thing. Look, a team that has no business even being in the game with a team like that, much less winning the game, that's what makes it a trap game. You overlook them. And who do the Packers have next week, Fitzy? If I would like to pull up my Packers schedule and look it up, it's the Cowboys. You don't think they've been circling that game since the Micah Parsons trade went through? Of course they have. So they're probably looking at it like, the Browns, whatever. It's the Cowboys. That's what we're looking forward to. Trap game, boom. You look too far ahead in the NFL, you get got.
Also, I'll admit, this is a cowardly low-risk move for me because Packers fans might be the nicest fans in all of sports. Like, you can come out with almost any Packers take, and they'll be like, you know what? Gosh darn it. We appreciate you, and we're going to prove you wrong over time. Packers fans act the way. Like, if the roles were reversed and I said it was a trap game for Browns fans, I'd have to get off of social media for 2 days. But I can say about the Packers, there's no risk here. And you're right. You know what? Myles Garrett is a superstar. He is a superstar. He is a future Hall of Famer, and it's incredible to watch. It just doesn't result in any real wins. So, congratulations. You got paid and you got sacks. But, hey, look, maybe there's a trap game. I'm trying to be positive here, Caroline.
Yeah, I mean, hey, you got paid. You're still a Brown, but you got paid.
Yeah, there we go.
He talked about how Super Bowl was the expectation in Cleveland this year. Said it before, I will say it again. You can't go on a path to the Super Bowl without some clunkers along the way, right? That's what they say. That's what the old adage is.
That's probably positive. All right, thanks so much for hanging out with Yahoo Sports Daily. We're back right here at 9 a.m. tomorrow. We will see you then.